So I am grateful that you came to listen to, most of us are going to be seeing two people speak today. But the first person that's going to speak today at 4 o'clock, mostly for you guys, I invited all of you kids here because a lot of you have dreams and goals in the near future, and that's like to get your black belt for the first time, or maybe to win state championships this year. And as adults, we set goals all the time. We don't always follow through with them, and it's habitual. And the person that you're going to get to meet, who many of you have met before, is going to give you some inspiration on how to overcome that. How to make sure that when you set a goal and when you dream something, that you follow through and that you get there. And black belt is a really great way to really consider everything that he's saying today and apply it to whatever that black belt goal is for you guys or for you adults. Oh, you have black belt goals too. Yeah. Matt Gersper is a former Tae Kwon Do parent, Casey's Tae Kwon Do parent, and his daughters took Tae Kwon Do with us for many years in Camp Verde. The older one, Shay, earned her black belt 2 years ago, little redhead who kicked over her head, if you remember, and then they promptly moved to North Carolina, and we're sad about that, but happy about that. I am super inspired by Matt. The first time that I met him, we were having this fundraiser pancake breakfast in like the back room of the Camp Verde school. Have you ever been in that room? A little room, because I think it was too hot or it was raining or something. And he came and sat down and bought a mass of pancakes and like basically chewed my ear off in a good way. We were talking all about Tae Kwon Do and how cool it was, and I was asking what he did and whatnot. But the most inspirational thing that he's ever done for me was just me watching his example in the last 2 years as we've gotten to know each other more. As a Tae Kwon Do parent, helping his daughter get to the black belt level, but just as a person, he was able to go live the life of his dreams. He chose to do it and he made it happen, and he's going to talk to you about that. And he's the founder with his oldest daughter, Kayleen, of a company called Happy Living, and I think you'll probably get to hear a little bit about that also. I love this company. They are very inspirational. They write blog posts and stuff all the time and have all sorts of neat things that can help us on our path. So he's here on behalf of Happy Living, and as well as our guest for later. So I guess I'm going to stop talking now so he can do the talking, and I'd like to introduce my friend and business friend in business and all that, Matt Gersper.
Well, hello. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. Who's working on their black belt? Awesome. Pretty easy. Pretty easy so far. So, for everybody, but black belts especially, what is inspiration? Who's got an idea, a comment? What's inspiration? What does it mean? Anybody?
Things that motivate you.
Things that motivate you, yeah? Anybody else? Black belt kids? What's an inspiration? Does something inspire you?
Vision.
Vision?
Picture, yeah.
Okay. I think inspiration is like a flash of clarity. You're living your life, you're doing something, and all of a sudden something hits you, and you say, wow, that's cool. Or you see somebody and you say, wow, I really like what they're doing. I wish I could do that. It's kind of an energy. It's something that really has created something, and you can feel it. And I've learned it is a kind of a communication to who you are inside and who you want to become, what your spirit really is, not what your mind is, but what your spirit really is. And the reason you're inspired by it or attracted by this thing is because it connects to you. So what you're attracted to or what you're inspired by might be totally different for me. And I should pay attention to the things that I'm inspired by, because that's going to help me find the power to get things done. And you should pay attention to what you're inspired by, because that's speaking to your core. And you're going to see in a minute why that's important. Have you ever had a flash of inspiration and say, you know, gosh, this is great, I'm going to do that. And then tomorrow, you do exactly the same thing you're always doing, and you don't do that? Has anybody experienced that?
Never.
Yeah. You go to a conference, I see it all the time. I used to sell products at a conference. And we would get people so excited at our conference, and they say, yes, we're going to buy your stuff, and yeah, this is awesome, can't wait. And they get home, nothing happens. It's inspiration, but then no action, right? That happens a lot.
How about in my business?
Okay. What stops inspiration? Why is it that you are so excited one day, you decide you're going to get a black belt, and there's many people who decide they're going to get a black belt, never get that black belt. They wanted to, and then they didn't do it, right? There's many reasons. I'm calling these reasons gravity. They're the things that are holding you in place right where you are. It might be your parents. I encountered growing up, you know, I saw parents who said their kids weren't good enough to do A or weren't smart enough to do B. It could be society. A woman's not supposed to open her own business. Or a guy with no money can't start his own business. Or our family never went to school and we don't have college graduates, so you can't be a college graduate. It could be family, it could be friends. What are other things? Any audience participate? What stops you? What holds you in place?
Lack of money.
Lack of money, resources, okay?
Procrastination.
Procrastination.
Laziness.
Yeah. Laziness. Yeah. Fear. Yeah. This is all gravity that's holding you in place. I saw one the other day, and I don't know how to spell it right. I think it's spelled B-U-S-Y-ness, busyness. There's so much social media and so much information and so much stuff that's just happening that I could easily say, gee, I've been busy all day. I want to start doing this thing, but I've been so busy I couldn't get to it. That's procrastination, but it's also, there's a real reason for it, busyness. So these are all the things that hold our life right in place where it is. Even though we're inspired, we don't do it. So the inspiration itself, it is energy, but it's not enough energy to overcome the gravity. The gravity has more force than the inspiration. Make sense? And now we're going to talk about physics. There's a reason why your life doesn't move. In physics, Sir Isaac Newton discovered that an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless a stronger force comes along to move it. So our lives are held in place by gravity. We have this inspiration, and it's like a small energy, a light breeze, but it's not enough to move us. And so it just floats away. We go right back to where we were. The object didn't move, and I'm living my life just like I was. And then tomorrow, I get inspired by something, and I get held right in place, and then I live my life the way it was. And then kids, what happens after that? You turn to be 50 or 60 years old, and you say, what the hell have I done with my life? So we have to figure out how to become unstuck. Okay? How you come unstuck is we need to find more power. And I'm going to talk about two sources of power tonight. The first I call the power of the heart. And I think what it means a lot of things. It might mean the power of your gut, it might mean your inner spirit, it might mean the power of love. I'm doing things I love. It's that thing inside you that gives you more energy and to do work when you're involved and engaged in something you love. Right? When you're doing something you love, you can do it all day long. It's not work. You love playing video games, and you've got your popcorn next to you, you can sit there all day long and you're totally engaged in it, and you lose track of time. But if you're involved and you're engaged in homework, maybe that's like, God, it seems like an hour's been a day and a half. So there's an energy, there's real power in the heart, in doing things that you love. And inspiration is a communication that's telling you that's something that I love. So I want to pay attention to that and see if I can do more of that in my life. Inspiration ignites the power. It's not the power. It's not strong enough. But then when you anchor it to something that you love, something that's really meaningful to you, then you have the power to do more. You might be inspired to be a black belt, and you might be inspired to travel. This would be a good example. You love to travel, you wanted to go to Disneyland, and your parents were going, but now you have a decision to make. What's more important to you? If you really want to be a black belt, and that's really important to you, it's deep in your heart, you see yourself as a black belt, then that draw to go to Disneyland is going to be, sorry, I can't go. We need to figure out a way that I can stay here with my friends, you guys go and have fun. It's not a problem for me. I don't care I don't get to go to Disneyland because I want to be a black belt. That makes sense? Normal kids, they'd say, I don't want to stay and work out, I want to go to Disneyland, because they don't care about being a black belt. And they wouldn't have the power to overcome that. So that's the power of the heart. There's a process that I've been using for about 40 years now. And I call it the 3 questions. And I use the 3 questions to try to figure out how I'm going to change my life from where it is today to somewhere in the future to a better place that I want it to be. And I kind of do it all the time. The process is like this. The first thing I want to pay attention to is what inspires me, what attracts me. And as I'm living my life, and I say, Tae Kwon Do really attracts me. When my kids were going through it, I really liked it. And I went home, and I worked through this process, and I decided there's other things I prefer to do and I like to do, and so I decided not to pursue Tae Kwon Do. But it was an attraction, and when I went through and I said, okay, I'm attracted to Tae Kwon Do, but I also love to hike, and I love to do these other things, I anchored them to why. Why am I attracted to something? Why is it important to me? And as I go through the process, I might have 10 or 15 things I'm attracted to. And I start to ask, why am I attracted to it? I might get down to only 2 or 3 that are really important to me. And once I've done that, I can let go of the others and I can focus on these things that represent who I am and who I want to be and what I love to do. What's really important to me. That's what why is. Why do I want this? And then the third thing is, how am I going to bring it into my life? If I was not a Tae Kwon Do athlete, student, and I wanted to become a black belt, before I joined the studio, I already had 24 hours in my day. I was already busy, and now I'm going to become a Tae Kwon Do student. I'm going to have to find a lot of time. I'm going to have to find resources. Somebody mentioned money. I'm going to have to do something different tomorrow than I was doing today, or otherwise I'm never going to either become a student even, and let alone get to be a black belt. So if you're inspired to do something new, something that's not in your life today, and you ask why it's important to you and you discover it really is important to you, then you have to ask, how am I going to bring it into my life? What am I going to do differently tomorrow that's going to let me pursue this thing? So that's the 3 questions. This process has helped me in athletics, it's helped me in business, it's helped me in my family life, it's helped me in my spiritual life, it's even helped me in my love life. And I'm not sorry, kids, I'm talking about my love life a little later on today. And this is the tricky part. If you want something new in your life, I believe the only way to get it is to become different, someone different yourself. It's not about getting something new, it's about transforming you. If you want to become a black belt student, no one's going to give you, no one's going to give you the black belt. You have to change into a black belt, right? You become a black belt. And that's a process that takes time. It's a transformational process of who you are. As you go through it, who you are changes, what you are inspired by changes, what's important to you changes because you've changed, and it just keeps cycling. You do, what am I inspired by? What am I attracted to? Why is it important? How do I bring it into my life? You go through another round, you're at a different place, and it starts all over again. Does that make sense? One of my favorite quotes is, "No man steps into the same river twice, because it's not the same man, and it's not the same river." And that's how life is. We're always changing. Things around us are always changing. Our world is always changing. Karen and I talked about doing Tae Kwon Do virtually through the internet, having students all around the world. And 10 or 15 years ago, if I tried to talk to her about that, she would say, it's impossible. We can't do that. But today, it's possible, right? With the internet and with all of the technology and video and the machines, it might be possible. So the world's always changing, so the things that we have a chance to be inspired by and the things that we actually believe we can do 10 years from now, 20 years from now, are going to be very different than they are today. So you're always changing, life's always changing. As you'll see here in just a few minutes, my life has taken a lot of twists and turns. And what I want to do is just kind of walk you through, introduce myself to you, and show you how I use the process of what I was attracted to, why it was important to me, and how I brought it into my life. First thing, when I was 14 years old, who's 14 here? Almost. How tall are you? 5'9"? How much do you weigh? 120. Who's 5'2"? Anybody here 5'2"? 100 pounds? 120. 120. So when I started high school, I wanted to be not just a football player, I wanted to be, what's your name? Nathaniel. Nice to meet you. I was 5'2" and 100 pounds. I was a little tiny guy with a squeaky voice, and I wanted to be a professional football player. So I had to thank you. So I had some transforming to do, some serious transforming to do. I had to change my body from a 5'2", 200-pound freshman, and I eventually grew into about a 6'3", 208-pound, hard-hitting, strong safety. Right, Scott? Can I say hard-hitting?
I agree with that.
I had to change my mind, the way I thought about things. Football's a crazy sport. Taekwondo's not quite as crazy, I don't think. In Taekwondo, this is a good analogy for you. In Taekwondo, you're taught to use your opponent's force and not to resist it, right, but to allow it. Is that right? In football, when you feel a force, you smash against it. That's what we're trained to do. And your mind doesn't want to smash against things. We're taught to run away from them. But in football, much like in, this would be overstating it, but the Army, you know, our military and our first responders run to the sound of the guns. That's not a normal thing to do, but they do that. Football, they train you to fight resistance. When you feel it, you fight against it. And so that was a big change I had to make in my life. The third thing is I was lucky to be inspired by a man named Fred Blitnikoff, who played for the Oakland Raiders a long time ago. Only if you're as old as me, you know the name. But I went to football camps, and my parents afforded me the opportunity to go to football camps, and I met a lot of pros there, and Fred was one of them. And I noticed something about Fred Blitnikoff. He was white, he was small, and he was slow. And he was one of the best wide receivers in the history of football at the time. He's a Hall of Famer. And I remember looking up at him, even though he was small, I was smaller, and saying, if he can do it, I can do it. I can become a pro. And so I had the energy in my heart that's what I wanted to be as a football player. I had evidence that it was possible for me to be because I saw it, I knew I could do it, and in spite of all that gravity that says, hey, you know, some little white kid from Walnut Creek, California is never going to be a professional football player, I believed that I could do it. So, who I became, I'm gonna say it this way, a hard-hitting psycho that wanted to conquer the limitations of my body. I was not the most gifted physical specimen, and I certainly played against a lot of guys, and Scott saw a lot of guys way more gifted. So I had to conquer the limitations of my body. It was a time of intense specialization and selfish focus. It was really all I cared about. I was really very, very, very selfish. I could care less about girls, about school. I went to school because I had to go to school to play football. It's all I cared about. And it was very selfish. And in a way, to be a black belt, you need that focus. Because without it, you're not going to have the time, you're not going to have, you need it to a point, at least. I had it completely. And I'll tell you how complete it was. I got cut 3 different times. My mom pointed out to me just last night by 3 teams called what start with R. The Saskatchewan Rough Riders in the Canadian Football League. The Oakland Raiders, they were the Los Angeles Raiders when I was with them. And they were also the world champions. In 1983, they won the world championship, so I had the great honor to go try to make the best team in the world at the time. Maybe that wasn't good luck. And then I went down to the Orlando Renegades in the USFL. In January of 1985, right? Yes, 1985. My wife was pregnant. I was having a baby in March, and I said, I'll see you in June. How's that for selfish? But that's intensity, and that's what I wanted, and that's how I was able to get through this part of my life. So that's football. Then I went to a family man. That was the next stage. And I was the first and only time in my life that I have been depressed. I didn't quit football. Football was taken from me. It was the only thing I cared about, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do, who I was supposed to be. 2 months later, Kayleen was born, and I found myself, holding her in my arms as a 24-year-old guy, probably crying because I wasn't playing football anymore. But if I was in a hospital setting, it might have looked like, oh, he's so nice, what a loving guy. I'm holding my daughter, and I noticed one thing the nurse said to me at the time. She's brand new baby, and she's suckling, and she said, so the nurse says, you can just put your finger in her mouth, and she'll even make her feel comfortable. So I'm this big guy holding this little baby, and she's sucking my finger, and I said, God, this is amazing. I've never felt this kind of love before. This is incredible. And I went home that night. My wife stayed at the hospital with Kayleen, and I'm sitting in her nursery, little tiny nursery in a little tiny apartment, in a rocking chair, with my relaxing and thinking about the day, and thinking about what does this mean? I'm a father. All this love. What is all this love about? And I couldn't get out of my mind how hard she could suck. And so I was sitting in there, seeing if I could suck my finger as strongly as my own little daughter. But what happened to me is I got this intense attraction, this intense inspiration that I needed to grow up, that I needed to be responsible, that I needed to become a family man. And I had to trade being the best, which is what I wanted to be being balanced. And I had to rework my mind to say, I can't be the best at anything anymore, because I can't specialize anymore. So the way I looked at it is, I can be the best at balancing. So that became the new focus for me. Who I became at that time, a gentler and more balanced man, for sure, working hard to provide love, support, and leadership for my young family. That was the transformation for me. Third major transformation. I got fired into entrepreneurship. I was working at a company, 43 years old, had disagreement with the direction I thought the company should go, and I lost the agreement and got asked to leave. And so again, what was I going to do? Well, I'd always been attracted to business. I had always wanted to be a business owner. I was a good employee. I got to do lots of different things in the companies I worked for, and learned a lot of experience and skills that I thought had helped me become ready to be a business owner. And so that was it. I launched out on my own and said I'm gonna own a business, and I got fired on Thursday, and on Monday I'd start a new company to do exactly what I thought my employer should have done. And so I started working at that business. I didn't have much money. We were lucky it wasn't the internet time yet, so I didn't have a lot of cost. I wasn't getting into manufacturing as a service, so I didn't have a lot of cost startups, but I didn't have any way I could see I was going to put food on the table. So it was a very stressful financial time. But I said, hey, got to do it. I got my family, and this is going to be my chance to do this next phase of my life and to pursue the freedom to make the decisions that I wanted to do in a company. So I started building this company called Buyer's Intent. It was going to replace the work that I was doing with my employer. And the next thing I know, I get a call from one of my former coworkers, and she says, hey, would you like to invest in this company that's involved in customs? And I said, I didn't know what customs was. If you don't know, customs are the rules that countries have for doing business with each other. So every country defines, it says, if you want to ship this box from the United States to Mexico, you have to follow certain rules, write out certain reports, and a bunch of paperwork to make that transaction happen. I'd never heard of customs. I didn't know anything about customs. And I started responding to this opportunity, and it turned out that I had a chance to buy the company. Not just invest in it, but to buy the company. And so we ended up, without money, we ended up building a plan, a vision for what we could do with this customs company, how we could upgrade it and use technology that I'd learned in my previous business to make it a lot better and create a lot more value in the company. And we built a plan and went around the country doing presentations like this to raise the money we needed to buy the business. And in a matter of really 5 or 6 weeks, we raised the money and we started the company. And for the next 10 years, I was involved in managing and operating this business. It was the most creatively free time of my life. I was involved in a new industry I knew nothing about. I was the first time as an owner of a company, trying to figure out what that's supposed to do. We were developing a vision for not only our business, but how our business fit in the bigger structure of customs industry. We were developing new products and services that had never been provided to the industry before. And I was writing and speaking. One of the things that I learned, even before we bought the company, was in the service business, if you want to be, the best way to promote your product is by promoting yourself through speaking and writing. So almost the week that we bought the company, I started writing a white paper about the customs industry, of which I knew absolutely nothing about. But I had some employees, and I had some customers that knew stuff, so I started interviewing them, building a story, and writing a paper. So you can buy a company without money, you can become an expert without knowledge, if you create a vision that other people will buy into, will believe in, show them a pathway to get from point A to point B. And for me, it was so energizing, where I found my power to do all that stuff, where I found the craziness to think I could buy a business without my own money, that we could build and add value in an industry I knew nothing about. Where I got all that extra power was on this incredible amount of freedom of being a business owner. And when you start down that path, and then I'm sitting with the board of investors, and they say, yes, we'll give you the money, that adds to the power. And then we go out and we build a white paper and they say, hey, you didn't really sound like an idiot. You sounded like you might know what you're talking about. And that adds to the power, and you start building momentum. So who I became, in this case, was an ambitious, high energy, you might kind of went probably back to some of my crazy focus, high energy, competitive businessman, and I wanted to conquer the world, again the world, to conquer the world, in this case of international trade. For me, it was a little bit easier because I'm more capable with my mind and my body, but still, it was back to trying to conquer something. I warned you. True love. Kids, who's truly in love? Come on. Black belts have to be honest. All right. I got fired into true love also. I got divorced after about 24 years. It was sudden. And when I found myself in that position, I started thinking about what do I want to do? What am I attracted to? Asking myself the questions. It turns out that I had my house, kids were gone, they were in college and away. I had the house to myself. My soon-to-be ex was elsewhere. I had a whole week to think, and had a hot tub at the time, overlooking this beautiful space in Colorado, and I sat out there every night saying, okay, now what? Never live by myself ever. I liked that. That was kind of attractive. But it gave me time to think. And I was inspired by two things. One is a book called Good to Great. Has anybody heard or read Good to Great? It's an awesome, awesome book. It's basically what it's about is a company studied businesses that were in business, and they were basically good companies, and then at a certain point in time they just took off and they became really great companies. And the way that it defined good to great was two companies in the same industry, maybe Procter & Gamble, or what would be good, General Foods and Kellogg's, two companies doing the same thing, basically performing the same way for about 15 years, and then an inflection point, and then this one just starts outperforming the competitor like by crazy magnitudes. That's good to great. And when they studied it, there were some real very simple basic things that changed that transition. And this isn't for talking about that. But what I was inspired by is that I had had a good life. And now I had the chance to have a great life. That was my inspiration. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, but I knew that's what I wanted. I needed to figure out how I could get a great life. The other thing that inspired me was a book called The Secret. Has anybody heard or read The Secret? Yeah? Secret's it was a great book for me, but the thing I got most out of it was you need to pay attention to what you're attracted to, because that's talking to your heart. So pay attention to what you're attracted to, and then do more of that. That's where you're going to find happiness. So I started thinking, well, what am I attracted to? And I didn't do it just from a woman's standpoint. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to get remarried. Certainly not after that first week. That wasn't where my mind was. But just in general, what was I attracted to? What did I want to bring into my life? How would my life be great? What would that look like? And I started thinking about that. And as it comes to women, I started noticing, I did a lot of traveling at the time. I was still running the trade company. And I started noticing, well, I'm attracted to young moms. Everywhere I go, God, look at she's a young mom. Oh, look, she's a young mom. And my kids were grown and raised. What the heck is going on with me? Attracted to young mom. But I had to pay attention to that. And so I ended up joining eHarmony. At the time, I thought, this is an interesting thing also that has to do with the second power, which I haven't mentioned yet, the power of the universe. Once your life changes, the things that you see change. The world didn't change in this case, I had changed, but I'd never heard an eHarmony commercial in my life. And suddenly, I heard them all over the place. They were on my car radio, they were on the TV. What the heck is eHarmony? And I thought, I'm not going to do eHarmony. That's a cheap way to meet women. That sounds horrible. And then I'd say to my others, wait a second, you're in the data mining business. You make a living using data to make good information or give information to people to make better decisions. That's all they're doing. So I convinced myself this is a smart thing to do. So I joined eHarmony one night and I start loading in the process, and they ask you basically, what do you want? And another way to say that is, what are your filters, right? Well, so filter on age, right? How old of a woman do you want to meet, or how old of a person do you want to meet? I was 46 at the time, I think that's right. So I went like 29 to 51, pretty broad. What about geography? Where could she be? I'd made the decision that if I was going to get married, if I was ever going to get married again, it was going to be with what I would consider or think about what a soulmate would be. I didn't know what that was, but I thought that's what I would want. If I could find my real soulmate, my real true love, then I'd get married. And if that were the case, why would I care where she lived? So I didn't have any geographical boundaries. What about race? What would I care what her race was if I found my soulmate? What about religion? What would I care? What about politics? Whoa. What would I care? Grudgingly, what would I care? And so that's what I did. I basically did a filter list. If you were if you were a living 29 to 51-year-old woman at the time and you weren't married, you came into my computer. And in about 3 weeks, I met Danny online. And about a month after that, I met her here. We went through all the process and very quickly said, okay, we're compatible, okay, everything's great, okay. Well, now we got to meet because if we're not physically compatible, then it's not going to work. Well, how are we going to do that? Because she was in Arizona, I was in Colorado. I said, well, I'll just fly down. She didn't think that way, but I flew all the time. So we met down here. We actually, I've never seen this woman before, ever. She meets me at the airport. We hug like we were it was a reunion after 2 years of being away from your loved one. And we held hands to baggage claim. And it was so strange walking to baggage claim, and I'm looking at her and I said, is this weird? She said, yes, kind of weird. Well, I don't want you to let go. And it was crazy. That weekend, we were standing on a rock, looking at a scene, holding hands, and a woman taps me on the shoulder and says, do you mind if I take a picture of you? What? Did I hear you right? Yeah, I've never seen a couple so much in love. Danny and I are saying, this was crazy. But we did find what we considered that soulmate. And the process was about understanding what I wanted and not being afraid of where that might be. And fortunately, it wasn't too far away. I'll tell you one other funny story about Danny and her mother. The first time I met her mother, she was trying to figure out, how the hell did you meet? You're from Colorado. How did you guys meet? And we told her the story a little bit. She said, well, there's a lot of pretty girls in Colorado. So she didn't get it. Anyways, who I became, a blessed, content, loving man who adores his wife and can imagine for the first time that I can grow old happily with my best friend by my side. The Tao man. Anybody know the Tao, the Cheng? Must be in this group. I got introduced to the Tao through a book. Totally attracted to it just instantly. Didn't know why. And so I read this one book by Wayne Dyer, basically 81 verses. He tells you the verse about the Tao, then he tells you a little bit about what it means. So I read it one verse a day for 81 days. Said, wow, there's a lot there, a lot I don't know. And so I decided to start again, only this time I'm going to read one verse a week. Read it every day. Doesn't take very long, 5 or 10 minutes. Every day, every morning, same verse for the week, and just try to think about how reflects on me and what I'm supposed to learn by it. And I've been doing that now for about 5.5 years. What the Tao's done for me is it's given me a framework for reflection. And the process of figuring out who you are, which is what you need to do, before you can decide what you want, requires reflection, requires thinking, requires paying attention to what you're attracted to, and then asking, why are you attracted to it? Why do you love this and you don't love that? And if you don't love this, then your job is to try to get that out of your life, pass up on those things, don't spend time and money and resources on those things, so that you have time and money and resources on the things that you love. And the more you do that, the more you'll be doing things you love all the time, and the less you'll be doing things you don't love. So the Tao gave me that framework. It helped me, one of the big things is it helped me to recognize energy, ideas. Ideas are energy also. Inspiration is energy. It's all real. And it helped me to distinguish and recognize ideas that are created from my mind or from culture, or things you should do, things you're supposed to do, those things that are obligations and burdens coming from somebody else, from those that are coming from inside, from my spirit or from my heart or from whatever you call that. And as I could distinguish those two things, then I started saying, well, these I'm not going to worry about so much. These I'm going to try to pay attention to and try to figure out what to do with them. I read a book about, I think it's about warfare, actually. Strange book. I read a story in this book. I'm sorry, it's about Alexander the Great. The book is about Alexander the Great, the greatest general ever to conquer the world. He conquered more territory in the history of any army. And he did it when he was about 22 years old. Amazing, amazing guy. So I'm reading this book about Alexander the Great, and I get to this story where his army is going from one country they conquered, marching to another that they're going to conquer. And this is what they were doing, just walking around the world, conquering territories and countries. And then if you played nicely with them, you could join his army, and if you didn't, it wasn't a good outcome. And so he just amassed this huge army. And they're marching and going over to the next place to conquer, and lo and behold, they stumble into a small group of naked yogis sitting on the road in their lotus position, and the army can't get by them. And so the guy in front says, hey, move it out, you guys have to get out of here. We're coming through. And the yogis said, no, we've been here every day for the last 50 years, and we're going to stay right where we are. And then the guy says to him, you don't understand. Actually, he finally got Alexander the Great to come up and try to help confront the cross. So the man himself was standing with the yogis, and his soldier says to the yogi, do you know who this is? This is Alexander the Great. He has conquered most of the world, and you will move when we tell you to move. And the yogi says, I've conquered the need to conquer the world. And we're not moving. And Alexander the Great was so moved by that, they walked around him. I read that story and I said, gee, I like that. I want to be that. I would love to conquer the need that I've had in my previous lives to conquer things, to conquer my body, to conquer business, to conquer. I'd like to do a little less of that and trust in my new studying that I'm doing and say, if I don't resist the force, if I let it happen to me, that's where I can gain more strength, more contentment, more happiness. So who I became, a quieter, more content soul, focused on enjoying the moment instead of trying to conquer some future state that didn't exist. The next big transformation, we sold our trade company. I didn't want to sell it actually, but I didn't have enough control of the company to stop it. So it got taken from me just like my football got taken from me. But I was already working on the next thing. I had moved into the chairmanship of the business that I had owned. I wasn't, and my plan was to get less and less and less involved in the day-to-day operations and to do something more. And that something more turned out to be happy living. But the way that happened is I was at a dinner meeting up in Portland, Oregon, with a high school friend of mine who I hadn't seen in many, many years. His name is Kevin, and my son, who is about 23 years old at the time, Kyle. And so we're having this nice dinner after my business meetings, and just the three of us, and my friend said to my son at least 12 times during dinner, "You know, Kyle, your dad and my glory days are behind us." First time I didn't respond to it. Second time I'm starting to think, what's he talking about? And finally, I mean, he kept saying it, and I didn't want to make a scene at dinner or anything like that because I was a quieter man, more content in the Dow anyways. But I wanted to talk to Kevin, so I asked if I could walk into his car, and I said, this really bothered me. I mean, the guy he's physically fit, he's married to the love of his life, he is the vice president of a construction company, owns his house, he's got the world by the tail, and he has this mindset. Of course, we both had just turned 50, and I noticed, there's a lot of people when they start getting a little older, they start thinking there's not much left. And there's a lot of talk about being sick and taking pills and all this negativity that comes up. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to do something that we can help people, help others think that you can be better tomorrow at something. No matter what your age is, no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're doing, tomorrow you can be better at something. And the process of trying to be better is very positive and very feeling good for you. The process of thinking about never being better again, having your glory days behind you, is very depressing and ugly and unenergetic. So I wanted to figure out how we could do that, how we could create something that would help. And I started reflecting, and when I don't know what to do, I try to reflect on what's made my life so good. How have I made changes? What is it in my life that's allowed me to get to that point where I thought, hey, the next 50 years is going to be great, as opposed to Kevin's thinking that, I don't know what we're going to be doing. And that reflection inspired what we call our foundations of health. And it's at Happy Living, what we do is we focus on, you can think of it as best practice, but we research ideas for living healthier, happier. We experiment with them, we try them out ourselves, and then we write about them. And as I started thinking about what it was to create a good life, we came up with the 7 foundations of health. On the bottom, there's 4 bases, and these are the 4 fitnesses. And the first is you need physical fitness, you need mental fitness, both applies to black belt training. Spiritual fitness, I'd say that applies too. Financial fitness, always takes resources. So those are the 4 fitnesses. The 2 blocks in the middle, love. And love means a lot of things, but a lot of what it means is, what do you love? Who are you? What inspires you? It also means loving others and taking care of them and all that, but a lot of it is that inward love. Love and adventure. And at the very top is significance. So we started our business to inspire others to believe that a better self is always possible today and every day until your final days. What am I becoming? This is a work in progress. The Tao is a work in progress also. A researcher, experimenter, and writer about concepts, products, resources, things that promote health and well-being. Lake man. I've always wanted to live near the water. Found out my beautiful wife was also always wanted to live near water. So about 5-6 years ago, long before any notion of selling the business, long before my business was even doing that well, this was not something after we made it. This was something that we recognized that we loved, and we wanted to see how can we bring it into our life. So we rented a lake house, we rented boats, we rented paddle boards. We went back and we played for 2 weeks on a place called Lake Norman, and we loved it. We were hooked. So we made a lifestyle decision. It took us a while. So one thing you'll notice about trying to change your life, it takes a life to create a good life. It takes all the belts to get to be in a black belt. It always takes time and a process. But we made a lifestyle decision, and we bought a lake, and we bought a boat, we bought the paddle boards, we bought jet skis, we bought all the things that we want to play with, and we even bought a diving board and put it on our dock. What I am interested in and what Lake Man means to me, there's a book called The Outliers. And in it, the guy studies about what does it take to become a master at anything. This works for black belt as well. To become a true master of a skill, of a complex skill, this guy says, Malcolm Gladwell, says it takes 10,000 hours. If you put in your 10,000 hours at the thing you want to do, you want to learn to play the piano, put in 10,000 hours, you're going to be great. You want to learn to be a black belt, put in 10,000 hours, you're going to be a black belt. You want to be a businessman, put in your hours. You want to be a writer, put in your hours. So if you put in your hours, you can gain mastery.
10,000 yen.
So the first time that we bought our jet skis, I was on a brand new jet ski with my little redhead, not my wife on the back, Shay. I was showing Shay how fast we could go and how fast a little part of the lake that I had swam. It took me about 15 minutes. I said, let's see how fast we can do it on the jet ski. So I gunning it towards my property, turned off all the gas, turned so I wouldn't run up our rock wall. But a jet ski doesn't turn if there's no power. There I go, right up, crashed my brand new boat with my daughter on back, right into this rock wall in front of my house. I clearly didn't have mastery of boating. So I am dedicating my 10,000 hours for my next 50 years to become a master of boating. And believe me, it's going to take every hour of those 10K. So what am I becoming? A boating master dedicated to spending as much time as I can in, on, and around the water. And when it's all done, when I finally reach the end of my life, it's all over, I want to be wrapped up on my paddleboard, light me on fire, send me off into the lake for a Viking funeral.
Praise
Author. I got to speed up here. Last spring, just April or so of this year, I had two big inspirations that seemed to come to my life at the same time. One was, I was at a speaking engagement in Austin, doing a talk on what, why, and how. And during that talk, it was great. It was the first time I ever did it. The audience was very inspired by it. And at the end of it, Kayleen and I were walking home to the hotel where I was and to her apartment. And she said, that's the book that you ought to write. Inspiration into Action, that's your book. Because we've been trying to think of what could a book be for happy living. That's your book, Dad. I started thinking, that's interesting. A little later on that week, I was home, sitting out on my porch overlooking the lake, and this beautiful airplane comes down, beautiful yellow airplane, lands right on the lake in front of my house. And boy, was I inspired. I said, that's cool. I'd like a lake plane. Wow, that's a toy. And then I went through the process of why. Why would I like a lake plane? Well, I don't really I'm not good at stuff. I crashed my jet ski. It's dangerous for me to own a plane. So quickly I was able to filter that out because it didn't fit who I was and what I am or what I want. It was, yeah, it's cool, but out it goes. I don't need to waste any more energy on this. This other one, this idea of turning inspiration into action, it directly touched my heart of wanting to give something back to help others. It was deep down in there. It also fit my philosophy of lifelong work. I believe you need to work for the rest of your life. Sorry, kids. For the rest of your life, work at something. It's the only way you can really be happy, in my opinion. And so I thought, could I write for the rest of my life? Yeah, I could do that. That'd be great. I'd like that. It fits my philosophy of doing something that you can sell or promote to the world. You weren't limited by your geography. So I could write a book and I could sell my book all over the place. fit that philosophy of mine. It fit my philosophy of what I call recurring revenue. This is an important one, kids. Recurring revenue. You build something once, and you sell it over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't cost you any more. And you just get recurring revenue. Just imagine if money was just showed up at your mailbox every day, and then you could be out in the lake more. So this idea of writing this book fit me really, really tightly. And it fit so tightly that it expanded. As I started doing the reflection, started asking why is it important, I started saying, I don't want to write a book. I want to transform myself into an author. I want to write books. I want to become an author. That's what I'm going to do. And so I had to decide, how am I going to do it? And the first thing I did, I got home, when I finally made the decision, I went and researched the book on how to write your own book and publish your own book. I read it in a weekend. And that very Monday, I changed my entire schedule that I've been doing for the last year and a half, so that I build 90 minutes of time into my book every day, 5 days a week, until I'm done. And I had to look at what I could not do anymore. And I had to take some things away and throw them away. And some of them were building products and software solutions for happy living. I really wanted to do that. We're working on some that were really cool. But I just couldn't, there's not enough time for me. I had to choose. So out those go because they didn't fit. And in goes the book. And while I was at it, I thought, hey, I'm changing my schedule. And there's two other things that I want to do and I haven't been able to bring in my life on a permanent basis. So I'm going to add them into my schedule since I'm changing everything and build this new routine. And so I added 15 minutes of stretching and 15 minutes of meditation. And so far, now though, I'm going to be able to build those into my life also because I made room for them. And I made room for them also because they're really important to me. And I just haven't figured out yet how to get that done. And I'm using the inspiration of the book to create and help my life in these other two ways that are totally unrelated to the book. Has anybody heard of Kaizen? Process of continuous improvement. Now, when I was preparing for this, I thought, well, that's very close, the idea of getting better every day, no limitations. Kaizen, that's very close to the football Matt and the crazy businessman Matt that is not the Dow Matt. So how does that fit? And what I thought about is in the journey of a lifetime, I think of a term that I call carefree diligence. So in the journey of a lifetime, diligence is the process of continuous improvement to realize my full potential as a human being. That's my job, that's my responsibility. It's taking one step after another, but without stopping, but without frantically being crazy about it. Being content, moving along. My body might be in motion, but my mind is still, my mind's carefree, I'm relaxed at what I'm doing because I'm doing what I love. And in the end, what I've studied, what I've learned is as you're working towards something, you're working towards a black belt right now, and you want to get that black belt. But the thing that I've found that really makes me happy is actually being in the journey. It's great to get the thing, but when you're all done with your black belts, you're going to look back and you're going to remember who you were, when you went through it. You're going to remember Grief Hill, I guarantee you that. It's going to be the journey that matters, and then you get right back into another journey. So I try to apply that concept of diligence, but carefreeness at the same time. So these are the questions. What inspires you? What is the process of brainstorming? You're just looking around, paying attention, see what hits you, and when it hits you, pay attention to it. This is not the time for filtering things out. I got hit by the boat and I got hit by the book at the same time. I'm inspired by both. Pay attention to that. That boat or that seaplane idea, that might come back to me again as something. And when it does, it might be something more real for me. So pay attention to what inspires you. And this process of paying attention, it's actually, in reflecting on what you want, it's actually preparing your body to be inspired. You're preparing yourself to get hit by something out there that is your inspiration, that's telling you this is important to you. That's the process of reflecting and thinking about who you are and what you want. that's when you see inspirations and they hit you. Love. I call it the power of the heart. I believe there's just an incredible power inside of each of us that often just is never unleashed. And you see it in people, right? You see people who seem to have an incredible amount of energy. And I think when you choose to do things that fit you, that you love, you get more energy. You don't get tired. You can do that thing all day long. It uplifts you. You can do more. And so that's what the power of the heart is. I mentioned the power of the universe. So the power of the heart comes from inside you. It's what we all have. When we connect to something we love, it's ignited and we're able to use it. There's another power called the power of the universe that I believe is very real. Are you familiar with the term called burn the boats? You know what burn the boats means? There's another Alexander the Great story. They were conquering an island nation. They snuck up on their boats up to this island nation, and they were all on shore. Nobody knew they were there yet. The commanders were getting the soldiers all fired up. We're going to go take this island. And everybody was charged and ready to do it. And then right before they ordered the command to storm the island, the commander said, "Burn the boats." So there was no going back. They were either going to conquer or they were going to be killed. They were all in. Burn the boats. There's no going back. So when you decide something, when you take action, you get focused, when you really get into it, when you make the commitment to burn the boats, you want a black belt? Burn the boat. You'll do anything to get your black belt. You're not going back. What's before a black belt? The striped one? You're not going back to the, what's it called? The
Skunk belt.
Skunk belt.
You're not going back to the skunk belt. That's right, I forgot. When you do that, you evoke the power of the universe. And what that means is things start to help you. You don't know why, you don't know where they're going to come from, but things help you on that journey. And I'm going to read this because it's my favorite quote. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's only one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. So if you don't know this, you're not going to get what you want. And it is that the moment one definitely commits oneself, when you make the decision, then providence can mean God, it can mean the universe, then something bigger outside of you, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help you, that would never otherwise have occurred. Things help you because you made the decision, and they wouldn't have been there had you not made the decision and started doing the work. A whole stream of events come from the decision, raising in your favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, financial assistance, material assistance. All this stuff happens which you couldn't have dreamed would have come your way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Get on it, start after it. Boldness has genius and magic in it. The magic is the power of the universe. Begin it now. So if you want to do something, decide to do it, burn the boats, and get started on it. And when you get started and you're doing the work, things help you. You don't know where they're going to come from. You don't know why they came. It doesn't make sense, but they show up. And if you're doing stuff and they don't show up, keep doing the stuff because they'll show up. Okay. Ernest Hemingway said, it's good to have an end to the journey, but it's the journey in the end that matters. So it's good to have goals, but getting there, that's really what's important. That journey is where your happiness lies. Doing the work I consider Tae Kwon Do work, I consider school work, doing work that you love, doing work that's in alignment with who you are, that gives you the power of the heart. The 3 questions in my lifelong practice of reflection, those things have helped me know what I love doing. And what I'm trying to do is build my life as much as I can around doing the things that I love and eliminating all the other stuff that I can and still be a responsible human being. And I call the things I love doing my INGs, my ings. And this is what they are: loving, learning, and exercising, reading, cooking, and meditating, thinking, boating, giving, playing, traveling, and entertaining. If I spend my life doing those things, that's what brings me joy. And that's what I'm really working on. For you, these are my final thoughts. And they're from some pretty important people. So especially youngsters, pay attention. From Sir Isaac Newton, the guy who told us an object at rest stays at rest, right? He also tells us an object in motion stays in motion. So get your life in motion, and it'll stay that way. From Confucius, he says it doesn't matter how slowly you go, so long as you don't stop. From a book called The Alchemist, this is a great one. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. From a guy named Paul Hawken, I read his book a long time ago. And I have these words on my bulletin board: relax, take your time, work, practice, and learn. From Billy Joel, who knows Billy Joel? Rock on, piano man. Slow down, you're doing fine. You can't be everything you want to be before your time. Takes time. From me, keep exploring, experimenting, and finding ways to improve yourself. Today, every day, for the rest of your days. That's how you create your absolute best life. And I'm over time, but I appreciate very much the attention tonight. And Kayleen, we have some handouts for you. We also have the notes of this presentation if you're so interested in it. It's online, so you can email us, or you can go to
happyliving.com/Cottonwood.
And if you put your name and email address, we'll send you the stuff. So